when I wanted to make money, I would just line up a bunch of guys. I would get $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 sometimes.
Hello everyone, it's Rose Fatal here to be fatally honest. This is the second episode of a 7-part series in which Gigolo Joe shares his trials and tribulations as an all-American sex worker. In this episode, Joe shares with us how much he was able to earn as a gigolo, the ugly, harsh realities of what it's like being a male escort, the compromises he was forced to make in order to adapt to what most clients want out of male sex workers. Want to know more about Joe's crazy experiences within the sex industry? Many more episodes can be found in the playlist linked in the description down below. Disclaimer: I do not endorse entering the sex industry under any capacity. I strongly suggest that no one attempt to copy anything they've seen or heard in my videos. Furthermore, I do not necessarily agree with any of the opinions or stories told by my guests in my videos. When you started off as a male escort, was it difficult to write your own ads? Many sex workers get inspiration on how to improve their own ads by looking through their competitors' advertisements. Did you resort to the same methods?
Absolutely. I would prowl through all the people, all my competition. I would read exactly what they were saying, and I'd alter it a little bit and see what worked. And eventually, I kind of figured out what would work and what wouldn't.
What demographic do you market yourself towards? Were you only open to seeing women and couples, or were you also open to accepting male clients?
I quickly learned that advertising solely to women would very much negatively affect my bank account. So I opened it up. I would post stuff like male, female couples, and just kind of mostly do as broad of an advertisement as possible. So I was like the could do everything guy. I figured out that being a bi guy is the most profitable. So I wasn't bi, but I advertised myself that way. And sometimes like it would come down to it and they'd be like, all right, you ready to have sex? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, for $4,000 extra. And they're like, what? And so that's how I would kind of get out of doing what I didn't want to do. So I guess I was a little bit manipulative in that way, but it worked for me. So I would get the $300 up front, like $300 for an hour was usually my rate. And put that in my pocket, and it never came out. And if they didn't like me from there, I got $300. That was kind of how it worked. I always got paid up front because I knew that there's possibilities of people not being totally happy in the end.
And then just not wanting to, pay you and
Exactly, yeah. So I made sure to collect up front, and a lot of it, honestly, was pretty good. There was very few times where there was a negative experience. I definitely have had people get really upset. Like, I paid you $300 to come over here and fuck me. And then, and I'd have to get on them and be like, oh yeah, you think I'm only worth $300? Like, yeah, it got a little intense sometimes, but for the most part, it was really good experience. It was really cool people that I was around, and they were really generous and very nice to me. And they're really interesting. That I was I feel like I'm somewhat intellectual, and I would always try and pick up every little piece of information and knowledge and wisdom that I could from these people, even though the circumstance was a little bit taboo.
Have you ever done any escorting outside of the USA?
Well, I eventually decided to travel around, and I did some escorting in Southeast Asia. I have not done escorting in Europe or like Africa or anywhere like that. Southeast Asia was mainly the area that I was, and they like white guys there, so it was very easy for me to get a lot of clients at a very high rate. I would be Sometimes flown out to like Philippines or areas like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed escorting in like Singapore. That was one of my favorite places. I even kind of got somewhat famous in Singapore. Like
Oh,
I'd go
really?
out to places sometimes, and people would be like, "Hey, I know you." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
The clients who recognized you out in public, were they mainly men or women?
It wouldn't be women. It would be like gay guys. If
Uh-huh.
I was like, because the gay guys were kind of out partying and
Yeah.
stuff, and I'd be like out at the club or something, and they'd notice me. The women that I was with were more professional type women that were just on a business trip for a quick duration, like a few days or something, and they would contact me, and we'd go out to dinner and kind of go back to her place and do our thing, and then they would kind of carry on for like a day or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd really like them and just kind of spend time with them because I felt like it, and wouldn't charge them anything, but it was definitely a fun experience with a lot of the women. When I wanted to make money, I would just line up a bunch of guys and just do like jack off video or scenes in front of them, or sometimes I would let them give me a blowjob if they paid me extra.
Yeah.
And I would just turn on some straight porn, stare at the straight porn, and not look at them.
Did female clients pay you less than male clients? And if so, why?
When a woman pays you, for my experience at least, I guess they kind of felt weird. Sometimes they didn't, but sometimes they felt weird about like paying a guy, because a lot of them were really attractive, and they could get a guy very easily, and it's just more convenient for them, and kind of taboo experience. I think for an average job with a woman, I wouldn't make that much, like $200 maybe. And with a guy, I could walk out with anywhere from $300 to $3,000.
Ooh, 3,000, like from one session, like.
Yeah. Sometimes it would like last a little bit longer than an hour, but I mean, if they pull out a wad of cash and I see some thousands, I'll stay for extra time and just kind of work my magic. I always had like something to help me get more money. So I wanted to go to school or whatever I wanted to do. Would be like $2,000-$3,000, and they would be like, "Oh well, I'd really like for you to do that, and here you go." It was very generous of them. It was super awesome, and so yeah, I may not have been the most honest sometimes about what I wanted to do with the money, but it worked, and I would get $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 sometimes for them to help me with whatever I wanted to do, or sometimes they wanted me to spend the night and cuddle, and I'll do that. It's fine, whatever.
Roughly how much money did you earn annually as a male escort?
So, for me, escorting was really, I did it sporadically. It wasn't very consistent for me. The times that I did it, I probably earned about $50,000-$60,000 a year, maybe. And in the 3 years that I did it, I probably earned maybe like $150,000 to $200,000 in that range. I'm not totally sure, but it was a lot. And I really just kind of did the jobs as an escort when I really needed the money, or sometimes I just kind of felt like doing a job. And because it was fun. Sometimes you'd show up to a random place, this random person's open the door, and you're like, well, okay, here we are. This is what we're gonna do. And you get to watch porn for a while. Sometimes like guys would pay me like $1,000 to come over and spend like 3 or 4 hours with them, and then all we would do is just do like a mountain of or like a mountain of, and it was just insane. It was totally insane. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll spend 4 hours with you and just do drugs all day. It's, absolutely crazy. Sometimes I'd work like a week and then wouldn't work for 2 weeks. And then I don't know, maybe once a week average, or twice a week or something. I'm not totally sure. But it wasn't very much work. It didn't seem very consistent at all.
While in the USA, did all your escorting take place in Austin, Texas, or did you ever do any escorting elsewhere in America?
I did it in San Francisco, and I did it all over Texas. And I thought about going to New York. I would sometimes post in areas to see how the response rate was, and sometimes post in areas to find people to fly me out to those areas. But I never did accept any of the jobs in New York. I always had plans to go, but something would happen or some reason. So no, I guess Austin, Texas was my main area.
Yeah.
And then surrounding areas in Texas, like Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and San Francisco, California were my main spots of business.
Yeah.
And I never really traveled to that many other places.
What about your time as a porn actor? Did all that take place in Texas as well?
I did a lot of the porn videos in Texas. Yeah, it was really cool. There was a guy that has a studio in Austin, Texas. Yeah, Brian Ockert. He has a studio there, and I actually did a porn scene with him where I got my dick sucked on his porn website, and that's the only time you could ever see me get a blowjob on camera.
From a guy.
From a guy, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so that was pretty much where I did a lot of my porn production stuff, and then a little bit of it was in California.
Joe wasn't kidding when he said he was a hustler. What do you think of the compromises and manipulations Joe used in order to get ahead? Do you consider his methods acceptable? Are his choices in life against your moral compass? Where do you draw the line? In the next episode, Joe shares his story of love and loss while still working as an escort. He also discusses what led him to transition from being an escort to a pimp. If you've enjoyed listening to Joe's story, please give this video a like, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe and ding the bell for notifications for future content. It's been Fatally Honest, ciao!